What is going on, folks? It is Steiner here with another episode of Secondhand Talent. Thank you to Mark Spooster for the art on my shirt. Thank you to Tiny Steiner, my tiny co-host. Thank you to Luke Chew and Tenacious Toys for the desk candy. Most importantly, thank you to you, our listeners, readers, and viewers from around the world. And to this week's guest, Jamin Van Dillen, artist and producer. Welcome to the show.
Hey, how's it going?
It's going good, man. We're coming right in hot off a conversation, and before we ease back into it, I gotta ask the same question I ask everyone at the start of the interview. First time we got in touch with each other, and I mentioned there was a podcast called, or I think you reached out to me to be on the podcast. Actually, what did you think Secondhand Talent was about? Like, just the name. What does the name make you think of?
I mean, it made me think of like secondhand clothes, but when I read what you actually do, I loved it because I feel like there's so many amazing people that are behind the scenes that do incredible work, and most people have no idea. And I feel like you really honor those people, and you really, kind of give them a voice, and they get to share their experiences and stuff. So I think I love what you're doing. That's like, my first initial thought was what I said earlier, but then when I read about what you did, I was like, wow, I instantly was like, this is cool. And I liked you, and I was like, oh, I want to connect with you.
Yeah, and it's been a wonderful connection, and it's fun to hear that, like the initial thought and then actually looking into it, which is, it shows a form of thought that I guess not a lot of people go through, or at least that I hear about, that they hear the name of it and then want to dig further to see what that means. And it's nice to hear that it resonates in that way. That's it means a lot. And I do appreciate what you have to say, because the intent of the show, or the real want, or the gap that I found and what I was looking for, is there's so many people that I know who work so hard, have made careers dedicating their working life to making sure that folks have a great time when they show up for doors, or when they hit play on Spotify or YouTube Music or Apple or whatever it is. And there's very little thought that goes into the humans that are behind all of that. And not just the artists, but the full spectrum of it. Everybody that goes into a track that you stream, everybody that goes into what you wind up seeing as the band on stage with their show. There's so many people out there, and so many of them are my friends. And I was looking for a platform that was at the very least asking for those stories. It didn't exist. And here we are, 100 some odd episodes later, continuously talking and having evolving conversations. And it's really just a wonderful thing. So where do you want to start with the interview? You want to start all the way back?
It's up to you, brother. I'm just kind of flowing, man. I always, I guess backstory, like you and I have kind of become friends. Like, so I feel like I don't know, we pick up wherever we left off. So I'm cool wherever you want to flow with it.
All right. So let's just take it from, you want to just pick up the conversation then?
Sure. I mean, I think
So I got exactly what I know what I'm going to say. Here we go. Right, I'm accounting for Mario's sake. 3, 2. So you and I were having a discussion before the show, and we really kind of wanted to pick up on that. So let's just, rather than our traditional interview, let's just pick up where we left off. What were you saying? Continue that thought, please.
sure. So I have been a kind of like collector nerd of like music history, and specifically I really love hearing the stories of how songs came together. I think that's one of my most favorite things because that's actually for me when I'm writing and or producing or whatever. There's like a certain magic that happens when the song comes together. Like I always feel like it's a God thing where music comes in, and I'm always amazed at how it comes together because it doesn't feel like it's me, like it's channeled, you know? So I just always am so amazed, and I feel like the way things come together is so magical, and how you had to meet this person and then this happened in your day, or it's always these amazing events that lead up to how the song was created, and I always find that so fascinating. So I've read so many different stories of, famous artists and how the songs came together, and it's so fun for me. So I always love sharing these stories with different people because I feel like, especially people that are starting out, it's really inspiring. So with that said, I made a show documenting. It's called Story Behind the Recording, and I spent like 3 months doing this. Like it took a long time. Like I edited the videos, I narrated it, I mixed the different music behind it, and I really just did like I didn't do it for money or like any kind of type of purpose for that. I just wanted to do it just to give back to other artists because I think the road of being a producer, an artist, or working behind the scenes for an artist, it's like it can be a grind, and there's so many disappointments and so many setbacks where hearing these stories is kind of what kept me going, where I was like, I wanted to quit so many times, like I would have had so many experiences. So yeah, I made 7 episodes, and it's on YouTube. It's free, and yeah, I just love that stuff. Like for instance, the song "Taking Care of Business."
Sure, Backman Turner Overdrive.
Exactly, yeah. So the Randy Bachman wrote that song. The history of that song is crazy. He originally he wrote that song when he was in the band. Oh, my mind's going blank. He was in a band before BTO, and they wrote the song "American Woman." My mind's going blank.
Golden Earring.
Huh?
Golden Earring.
No. Hold on, let me just search it really quick because it's gonna drive me fucking crazy. The Guess Who.
The Guess Who.
Kind of ironic. I had to guess who it was.
Golden Earring
So,
was what?
what was that?
Golden Earring wrote another song. I forget which one.
Yeah, so he was in the
Guess
Guess Who band, and he wrote the song "Taking Care of Business," but instead the song was called "White Collar Worker," and the way that he wrote the song was about he was going into the studio with the Guess Who, and they were recording with with a famous music producer who produced for like the Isley Brothers and like I think like Dionne Warwick, or I forget I forget the names, but he went in there, and her son is an engineer, but he's blind. And Randy Bachman was like just kind of enamored with this whole, like he's like, what this is really crazy. And and he would dress up in like this tweed outfit, and like and it'd be really hot, like he'd have a full suit on, and it'd be like hot summer days in New York. And Randy was like, why do you wear that like full tweed outfit? And and he was like, because I want to be like Phil Martin, the producer of the Beatles. And so Randy was obsessed with him, and he asked him, he's like he noticed that he was leaving like every day, like on like right on the button, he'd be like 5 p.m. he would go home, and he's like, where do you live? And he's like, oh, I live, like he lived out of the city, so it was like kind of a trek for him to get home. And he's like, why don't you just like live here? Because I guess his mom, that they owned like a huge building that had like other rooms and stuff. He's like, why don't you just live here? And he's like, I want to be my own man. Like, I want to live on my own. And so he was so interested. He's like, how do you get home? Like, he's like, can I watch you get home? And so he's like, sure. So like the next day he met him in Grand Central Station because that's where he gets off. And then he walked with him back to the studio, and he said he would like count out like how many steps to each block, and then he would hear the lights for like the green light and like or the stop and go for the crosswalk. And so he was just blown away by this. So he started writing lyrics like everyone's getting pretty, getting ready to go in the city, and it was like all through the eyes of Stanley. And then he named the song White Collar Worker. So he played this song for the Guess Who, and they didn't like it because he took inspiration from the Beatles song Paperback Writer. So when he came to the chorus, it sounded really similar to Paperback Writer. It was like white collar worker, like it was very similar. And so the Guess Who was like, we love the verses, but we don't really like the chorus. So that they ended up not using it. And then uh, later he went in BTO. BTO is playing a show, and the lead singer lost his voice. And earlier on the way to the show, Randy was listening to a radio station, and the disc jockey was like, I'm Daryl B, and we're taking care of business. And he's like, oh, that's a cool song title. So he writes it down, and he gets to the show, and they play the set, and they're getting toward the end of the set, and the lead singer was like, hey, like he went up to him. He's like, hey, I lost my voice. Like he lost his voice from singing. He's like, dude, you're gonna have to sing the rest of the set. And Randy like only kind of sings backup vocals, and he's like, shit, I don't know what to do. So he sang he sang like a because his mom is Ukrainian. He sang like a Ukrainian version of Oyo Como Va.
Right.
And then
Oh wow.
after that he played Taking Care of Business, but instead of going to White Collar Worker, he thought like just on the fly, he thought to improvise and and sing Taking Care of Business. And the song was crushing. Like it did really, really well. And they ended up playing that song for like 20 minutes. And afterwards, the guys from the band were like, "Hey, man, we need to record that song, and you should record it." And so it's like a crazy story. And then it gets even crazier. I'll save it for anybody who wants to watch the story.
You
I won't.
know, it's really awesome that of all of the songs by all of the bands, Backman Turner Overdrive was actually one of my first concerts that I saw as a kid growing up. My dad
Really,
used to
that's
take me
cool.
to Yeah, my dad used to take me to shout out dad. Um, he used to take me to these concerts in the park out in the west suburbs, and we would see bands like Backman Turner Overdrive and Rare Earth, and I was obsessed with Pete Rivera and how he would be playing drums and singing. I thought it was awesome. It was before I knew about Phil Collins and the like, and seeing oh why is the name Jim Peterick from 38 Special and Survivor, and getting to hear him sing those songs. It was an absolutely incredible experience. So it's really wonderful to hear the history of one of my favorite songs by one of my favorite bands. That was one of the first bands I ever saw. I got a cool story for you. Um, there's two bands that existed for a time, and they both backed up a particular individual who's still touring, goes by the name of Bob Dylan. And the first band that backed him up became the band, which is, it's a name. I mean, it's and speak, and I'm a huge fan of their music, but like the band is A, presumptuous, and B, I mean, like, you're more than that. But it's what they went with, and they made some damn fine music. When Lowell George told Bob Dylan that they'd be starting a band on their own, and I'm pretty sure I've got this right, and folks will correct me if I don't, but I do believe Bob Dylan said something to the effect of starting your own band is no little feat.
That's funny.
Yeah. And that band was aptly named, I think, compared to the first one. Stories are everything. It's why we do this show. It's the one of the main influences of the show was the Wall of Sound tour, and the person who wrote the book about it, Brian Anderson. I had the opportunity to go see him speak recently. Fantastic book. Shout out, Brian. Um, Wrote a phenomenal history about the Wall of Sound, and I'm glad somebody did, because one of the things he said to me during his talk was, or well, he said to the audience was that as you know in the process of making this book over the 2 years it took to do all the interviews and research, etc. Of the roadies that were remaining that he interviewed from that tour, I believe he said three were still alive at uh, the time of this recording. So that's pretty. It's pretty wild, and it always struck me. You have 3 years of touring, just about, where you've got dozens and dozens of people involved every year. There's so many stories, just in general, from all of the crews that have toured with all of these bands, not just the Grateful Dead and the Wall of Sound tour, but really when you open up the scope of it, there's so many stories out there, and so many that have just been lost for the lack of someone wanting to ask for them. And I do occasionally get asked, is there some sort of purpose for documenting the stories, or is there, like, what are the ends to it? And there really are none, other than for the sake of preserving the stories themselves, because I think that without stories, we have very little left to go on.
I agree. Yeah, I think, well, it's kind of cool too, like having your own platform and just, like for me, the stories that I put out, like even my own, it's like, you kind of, obviously it's like selective to what you like. So you get to curate, like, your most favorite stories, which is, that's what I enjoy. And, um, yeah, there's just like my mind now is like, I'm thinking of like other just situations like,
Well,
I
I was
think.
hoping you could tell us a little bit about the story that about your hit that just charted, and what how that all came together.
Oh yeah, yeah, that's a good story too. So I write songs, I produce songs for different clients and with different people, and one guy I've written a ton of songs with, like probably one of the longest like running like collaborations I've done with Eric Bear. And I don't know, he might send me a riff, or like he'll send me some lines of a song or something. And one day he was like he was like he's like, I started writing this this like kind of like a tribute song for the Beatles. And I was like, oh, that's cool. And he just sent me like some lines from it. And I was like, how did this kind of come together, and he's this is so funny. He's like sitting in his car, and he was thinking, he's like, there's no lingo that rhymes with Ringo, like Ringo Starr. And I was like, oh my God, that's so funny. It's like that thought form just, led to him, like writing down the song. And it was kind of coming, it was cool because he's a little older than me, but it was coming from his perspective of like kind of like the Beatles like hit like crazy in the early 70s for him, like when he was a young kid and he bought the albums. And so he wanted me to kind of flesh out the song and like and help him write it. And it was so cool because I just asked him a bunch of questions like, oh, that's amazing, like what was it like, what did you feel? And I don't know, if I'm ever working with someone, I always just find that shit so fascinating because that kind of gives me the inspiration. And so I was able to put myself in his shoes and like be that kid like in the 70s and like running home and like your first record is the Beatles and it's like, wow, this is just fucking amazing. And putting that needle to the vinyl and hearing it. And so I just sat with that, and I started messing around with like I had some royalty free samples that sounded really cool. And I was like, man, this sounds like really good. This is like, it gave me a great bass. And then I started messing around with it, and I felt like that I wanted to get I have a bunch of different vocalists that I work with, but there's like one in particular that I've done tracks with, and his name's Phil Martin Taylor. He's a producer too and a songwriter. He's really incredible. And I called him, and he lives in the UK, and he lives in London. And I called him and I told him about the song, and I was so excited. I was like, "Oh man, like you got to hear this, and it's coming along really cool." And I wanted to hire his son sings, and his son has like an incredible voice. And I was like, I wanted to see if Ollie could do the vocals on this. And he like immediately said, "Wow, you must be like feeling some vibes or something." Like my hair stood up, and I'm like, "What?" And he's like, "We're literally like we're in Liverpool right now. Like we're in the area where
Shut
the."
up.
No, it was so cool. And like I mean, just talking about it now, like my hair is standing up. Like it was just so cool. I was like, "No way." And so he connected me with his son, and he's like, "Yeah, this is super cool." And so we started putting it together. And then I just felt like the song, like the lyrics were done and the music was done at that point, but I really felt that I was like, this really, it needs a bridge, because it just felt like there was something lacking. And so what I want to do is Ollie's dad, Phil, the one I talked about earlier, he's a fucking amazing keyboard player. So I told him, I was like, hey, let's do something cool. Like let's use like an older keyboard, or we'll use that 60s that sampled keyboard that the Beatles played. I forget the name of it right now off the top of my head. Um, so he's like, all right, cool. And then what I kind of had in my head for this song was like for the bridge, what I had in my head was like, kind of like a upheaval from the Beatles song, not In My
Revolution
Life,
9.
Day in the Life. And like in my head, I was like, oh, I want something this, I wanted something that was just so like huge, and like just took you somewhere else. But I didn't have a crazy budget to do, all these other instruments. And so I was just imagining he'd come back and like give me this really cool like breakdown on the keys. And he's like, really quickly, he messaged me back the next day, and he's like, okay, cool, mate. He's like, I fixed it up, mate. And he's a huge Beatles fan too, so it's like been a big part of his life. And he sends over like 25 files, and I was like, holy shit, like what is all this stuff? And he did keys, he did strings, he did sitar, like you name it. And it was
Wow.
everything. Yeah, it was everything that I kind of wanted, but I was like, I don't know, I don't really have the budget for that. And he just intuitively did it, and it was so fucking amazing. Like when I heard it, I cried. The first time I heard this bridge, I like cried because it was just so moving to me, you know? And and I was like, wow, I called him back and I was like, what, dude, you're fucking amazing. Like I was like this, I was like, I could have never made this song what it turned out to be, you know? So so that happened, and then I mixed the song, I finished it, and then I took it to Timbaland. I played it for Timbaland, and he was like,
Oh shit.
yeah, he was like, holy shit. He was like this, he's like, this sounds like it should be on a like a Beatles biopic or something like that. Like it's at that level. And I was like, wow, thank you. And so he said that,
Damn,
and then like
dude.
three, huh?
I said, damn, dude.
Yeah, so it was a cool compliment. And then what's wild though is he kind of like, in a way, he kind of like blessed it or predicted what happened like 3 months later. Is it literally, yeah, it hit the charts, and we made number 43 on the UK charts, which was like,
Hey.
yeah, it was so cool. It was so cool. So that was like, again, it just one of those stories where it all started from Eric, saying there's no lingo that rhymes with Ringo. It was just such a cool, um, yeah, it was like a cool experience. I love that shit. Like super fun.
Oh, it's fabulous. I mean, my pathway to this podcast is not something that I would call linear by any stretch of the imagination, but it's absolutely spoken word is certainly my background, stand-up comedy, voice acting, radio, and all of that. And I did have the opportunity to interview folks when I was in college and on the radio on WZRD 88.3 FM Chicago. Um, it was a great time, but I appreciate the stories that folks share on this show a lot more now. I think mostly because they come from such a diverse array of spaces. And one of the, uh, yeah, let's call it like that. One of the things that I really appreciate about the show is that it has given me the opportunity to talk to people who do all sorts of things that I think are incredibly cool. And like, I do not have the technical skills to produce a song. I don't know the gear when it comes to running sound or lights or, uh, you know, true pure stage management and running a festival. Like it's all outside of my wheelhouse. I've been adjacent to it. I've done a lot of the heavier lifting stuff like road managing, tour managing, production assistant for festivals, stage managing for smaller shows. But it is, I think about all the stories that I have. We were talking about some of them earlier in our conversation before the show. Um, for all the stories that I have, my friends have 1,000 more. Folks like you have thousands more. And one of the real pleasures of the show has been the opportunity to interview so many different kinds of people who are happy to share those their time and those stories with me, with our audience. I think it makes us a better platform. I think it makes the show a better show. And it's nice for once to not have to always be the storyteller. I gotta say, it is nice to get to hear these stories and get to hear new fun stories about things that I'm passionate about. Because for so long and for so much of my career as a performer, it was about writing jokes, telling the stories. And now I have the real opportunity of getting to just hear some incredible things that I otherwise never would have heard. And quite frankly, that I think that our audience never would have heard either, or anyone else. Like that's the other magic of it, is that, now that these stories are here now, they exist, they're archived, they're part of, the internet canon, so to speak. Like they're not going anywhere. Once they're up, they're up. And it's kind of nice to know that not just my stories, but the stories of everybody who's been on the show are out there. And hopefully someday comes across someone comes across one of them, and you know it's a moment where they need it. And that's really just kind of all we're doing it for. Without the stories, we don't have the opportunity to be able to provide that sort of a space or a moment.
Yeah, 100%. And speaking of opportunities, I think sometimes, like for people, when you honor when those ideas, that when that true when that song comes in, like sometimes the best songs, an opportunity for the best song will come at the most inopportune time. And like this happens to me a lot, where I remember recently there's a an up and coming artist, Josh, that I worked with, and I was producing a song for him, and I was just kind of churning out lots of different ideas. Like I think I did like I had his vocals, and I think I did, I don't know, four different kind of iterations of what the song would sound like, and it just wasn't there yet, And I had a date coming up at like 7 p.m., and I think it was around 6:30 ish, and so like I'm working on the song, and then I finally stopped to take an Uber. But what was crazy is that even though I wasn't there physically making the song, is like I was still making the song. So I got on this date, and it's the first time I've met this woman, and I could just feel it in my whole body that like I have to fucking leave right now, or this song, like what's coming through for this song, like it's gonna be gone,
Yeah,
so so
absolutely.
literally, yeah, 10 minutes into the date, I was like, hey, I'm sorry, but like I have to go. And I went home,
Listen,
and
when I mean, I've forgotten more jokes than I'll ever remember. So I like it when you know.
yeah, well, that's the thing. I think what the part that's scary for me is that like I don't know, every time I make a song, it's like I come up to a blank canvas. Like I feel like I have this kind of I don't know, it's like a childlike innocence where I almost feel like I've never written a song before, so I get nervous, and so I never know what's going to come out. I never do. Um, but it's like, there's that where I'm like, oh, I don't know what I'm going to do, and then the social conditioning, I don't want this to look rude, but when it comes in that strong, like I've learned to just, deal with if people react in a certain way, I'll leave. And I feel bad. I wish I could clone myself, but I know in those moments, like that's what I was made to do. And it's really important for me to honor that. So that said, like I literally went back home, and I just started messing around, and I found the right parts, and everything came together, and I was like, wow. And it was just so cool, because it always reaffirms me, that like, okay, this is what I was supposed to do, this in that moment, and it felt so good. So I think, um, like training that muscle to do that, because I'm sure that song would have never come to be what it did, it never would have came out that way if I didn't do that.
Oh, absolutely. And I actually don't know if I've told this story on here yet. Maybe I did a while ago. But when I was kicking around the idea of starting this podcast, um, we did not have any budget for equipment or like a platform to record on. We were using, as many free limited things as possible. And before it even started, I had I had this very it was this sort of trepidation of getting this project started without the right camera, without the right microphone, without the right, this, that, or the other. And credit to Steiner, credit to my wife. She drew up the logo actually before we got this microphone, and was like, you've sharpened the idea to the point where like it has to be done. Like you've basically created a platform for yourself. All that's missing is you actually doing it. And at the end of the day, it's the stories that matter, in the sense of it doesn't matter what microphone you use, what it's putting into what computer, what kind of camera, if you have lights, it's just you and
Yeah.
whoever you've got on telling the same stories. And if you don't start it now, then you're just not going to do it. And she knows me well. Listen, what can I say? And I got it started, and after I think a season, after I think the first like season or so, I think after my interview with Justin Hampton in season 1, I kind of realized that this was going in a direction that I did not anticipate whatsoever. The ends, I won't reveal the true ends to what this podcast was supposed to be a vehicle for. That's going to remain a mystery for quite some time, in case we actually do decide to pull that trigger and go for that idea. But the podcast was never, it was always intended to be a side thing, as like a vehicle towards something else. And it just became its own machine, and we created a small budget to invest in a little bit of gear and some software. And I had never edited a video or audio before in my life, prior to the first episode of this podcast. So folks, if you're not on YouTube, you can watch a learning curve going from season to season, in my skills as a video editor. You can actually see the journey along with me as I progress. And that hasn't stopped me from doing it. I'm learning new things about how to do it all the time. And then ask, and then knowing when to ask for help, right? Like I had no idea what sort of equipment to use. I mean, I'm a comedian. I'm at any given point in time, I'm the least hardworking person in the room. Like there's nobody. I just show up and like I'm there. I didn't plug the microphone in. I do more setup for this show than I do for my stand up. I don't plug in the stage lights. I don't plug in the PA. It's important to thank all those people. That's why I do this show. But you know, I don't do much heavy lifting. It's really the stories, I think, that carry it. And some of the best feedback I get, the best feedback I get is when someone will reach out, and let me know that they took something away from an interview. Or actually the other week, it was really interesting. I walked into my local shop, and my person who works there, that everywhere I go, I talk about the show. And he said to me, "Hey, I really love that interview you did." unprompted. I hadn't seen him in about a month, and it just caught me completely off guard. And I was like, "Who? What interview did I do?"
That's funny. You're like, who does interviews? What?
I forgot. Like there was a moment that I just forgot that I had a show. And he said, he goes, "No, I'm a big Widespread Panic fan. I really like the interview you did with Turner from the Sandbox channel. Shout out Turner." And I was just like, "That's amazing. Thank you." Like, and like, I don't think he understood why I was so happy about it, but like, it's just like, it's the coolest feeling to just like walk into your local shop and unprompted, like, "Hey, that was a sick episode last week." Like, that, what? Like, you know, it's, I don't like, I don't expect that. I don't, I've never been at a point. I don't think the show's at a point. I don't think the type of person that can expect that. That's not why I do the show. Um, it really caught me off guard. Like, it really caught me off guard to get recognized by anyone really. But yeah, it was nice. It was nice. That was the story there, folks. And thanks for
Yeah, I
listening to me
mean,
ramble.
that makes sense. So I mean, even famous people, like, when they're out doing like normal everyday stuff, it's like sometimes that's the same, it's similar because they're like you're probably not really thinking of that. And
Yeah,
and it's
there's
just
sort of
what
like
you
a
do. Yeah, it's just what you do. Like I don't think people don't understand that. Like, I have stories like where dude, I was like spent the night at Justin Bieber's mom's house. Like most people that I would say stuff like that to, they would be like, they couldn't even comprehend it. Like sometimes they won't believe me. I don't really give a shit just because like
it's
you know how it is
hilarious.
when you're in that world, you're around a lot of famous people. It's like that's like what you do. So like it becomes like a normal everyday thing. So you could be in a place and like you're not thinking of that because that's just what you do. And then someone's like, "Oh my God, hey, it's so and so," or "You did this," and you're like, "Wait, what? Oh yeah, okay," you know?
There's definitely a lot of truth to that. I never, especially when I did stand up, even more so, I think that, and when I was doing stand up, I was gigging like I was doing like 10 open mics a week when I was starting out. Like I was going from place to place to place on a single night on weekends and like around all of my college classes. Like I would be just going to open mics. And after a year or two of doing that, you start to get like people start to remember who you are. And it it culminated, I would say, like the height of my career publicly, really, in America was in 2014 to the end of 2015. And I remember at one point, I don't remember exactly what year it was, but I was at a Robert Plant show. And it was when he was touring with the Sensational Space Shifters. So early 2010s, sorry, early 2010s, I would say. Um, I was sitting at the fence, and and again, when I say people remember you, I don't mean like the audience. That's not who. That's not who I'm like the people at the venue, the other comics. I still like nobody like if people. It's like you said, there's this level of face blindness when it comes to seeing celebrities in public, where it's just like you're not expecting to see the person that you saw with the spotlight on them or playing the guitar or on the
Yeah,
screen
exactly. And
just
it's like,
to be
yeah, it's
around you.
Yeah, and people, dude, we're all humans, like at the end of the day, like
But
that's
even when you do, it's not like, just go up to people and I remember just this one specific instance because nobody really, unless it was a scenario like it was a festival or something, and you're on the same campgrounds with someone for 3 days, like you're gonna talk to them. Um, this is the only time I think it was not a show of mine whatsoever. I think it was either part of the Taste of Chicago or it was a concert at the Band Shell in Grant Park, and something I was completely not affiliated with. And I got lawn seats because I'm cheap, and and I went all the way up to the front of the lawn, was sitting along the wall so I could see as best I could, and I heard my name behind me. And I thought it must have been some friends of mine. And I turned around and three or four people I just dash up to me like it's him. And they, I guess they had just seen me perform in Michigan. And
oh wow.
they were in town, or they were from Chicago and they were in Michigan, and I was performing, and they saw me perform, and asked to and I remember this because they asked to take a picture with me, which, like, it's the weirdest thing to me that somebody would want to take a picture with me. But I mean, 12 years ago, I guess, from the time of this taping, I sort of understand 12 and a half ish, but I still don't really get it. But they looked at me and I looked behind me because Robert Plant was behind me. And I was like, are you sure you're not trying to take a better? I think I'm in your way. Are you sure you're not trying to take a better picture of the stage? Like I can duck. No, it was one of the wildest because that doesn't happen. It doesn't happen regularly. Like it doesn't for whatever people think glamour and glitz is. It's like no, we don't do this for that. We do this because you know it's something that would make us feel something so strongly that we would get up and leave a blind date 10 minutes into it.
Exactly, yeah. Yeah, and I think, along those lines of like, like yeah, just being in your normal everyday. It's like there's levels to it, like I can't really speak for like being crazy famous because I never reached those levels, but I've been only just, been around people that have experienced that and like, at the end of the day, it's like yeah, it's like that's your job and, that's it's like we're all, normal
I'm
people.
really, I am so content not being famous. I do not want that. That is like, no, 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 no. That's not for me. I love what I do. And if I could continue to do stand up, I would. This is my vehicle for my stories at this point in my life and my career. And I love every moment of it. And it's not something that I would want to take away from in any way, shape, or form by going for personal acclaim. Um, it's not. It's just not what it's about. I don't feel like this show. Like this is an interesting episode. I've probably talked more in this episode than I think any other in the history of the show, which is a little weird. It's a real story time with Steiner here, but I don't feel like this show is about me. It's why I don't do episodes by myself. It's not for me, you know. Well, folks, normally I would ask our guest Jamin for his closing thoughts, but fear not, we will be back next week for part 2 of Story Time with Steiner and Jamin. Jamin, we will see you next week. And folks, this has been an episode of Secondhand Talent. See you next Wednesday. That's a podcast. There we go. All right.
Cool.
I don't care.